you tell I'm in denial?
You can't stay at the top forever.
I was also very surprised when I looked at my phone and saw Joe Girardi dismissed.
Well, I think mine were with common sense.
I think now belongs in the all-time greats top 10.
Boston, I really think only got to this point because of a guy named Chris Middleton being out for the Bucks.
That power play just was unbearable. It was humming.
Man, am I happy. I knew that this was going to happen. I knew he was going to come back.
When I think of New York Yankees now is Judge, probably people in the past when Jeter was coming up.
I would be shocked. A little bit hurt.
Hey, this is Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, TexasFootball.com, and Valley Sports Southwest. You are listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week once again. I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by the man that I'm sure we're going to disagree on this NFC one. I was surprised we agreed on the AFC one. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure you check that one out. Of course, the man I'm mentioning and ready to talk NFC with, Austin.
Yeah, this is definitely harder, Kevin. I don't blame you for thinking that we're going to disagree on this one a little bit more. I know you didn't get the chance to do this with our other guests that you had while I was out, but I am excited to see who you have because this one it's more difficult. It really is, except for one. I think one is pretty set in stone.
Yeah, and since I went first on the last one, I'll let you do yours first.
Sure, that's fine. So my number one is who your number one should be. It's the Detroit Lions. I don't think we're going to have any disagreement there. Right? We can just get that out of the way.
Yeah, it's one. Lions are one. And I would say it's one Lions, and then you have separate.
So you think it's a pretty big gap?
I think there's a gap.
You think it's a big gap?
Yeah, I'll go big gap. Big gap.
Okay. So I have at number 2. This is where we start to get a little bit. I think 2 through 4 are really close. I went Packers at 2. I think the Packers, with everyone healthy, are an extremely talented football team. I know Jordan Love can turn the ball over, but that's kind of how he plays, and you just have to live with it. My number 3 are the Eagles. Saquon is playing at such a high level right now that that's a big difference. And then I have at 4 the Vikings. I wanted to put the Vikings higher, and I really do think that 2, 3, or 4 can really be flip-flopped in any order. I can see the Vikings at 2. I don't, just because I think Sam Darnold does cap their ceiling, but he's playing fine. But did you watch any of the Bears game today? Or had a chance?
I caught the end. I didn't have the time.
Yeah, so the Bears scored a touchdown, get an onside kick, and then tie the game and send it to OT.
They got the
and
onside kick?
Yeah.
What? That's crazy. I missed that. I just saw onside kicks work? No way. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm like 99.9% sure there's an onside kick.
What? That's wow. Okay, sorry to interrupt from that. I did not know how that happened.
They have a tendency of letting games get close, but they're 9-2. And then my number, I'll let you go do your 2 through 4, and then I'll go into my 5 before you do your 5.
I do agree 2 through 4, they can flip flop. Surprisingly, we agree on 2, and that's the Packers. So we agree on 1 and 2. The thing, though, you mentioned it with Jordan Love. And this is what gives the Packers also the edge, is Matt LaFleur. This team is so good on offense. And I do think Josh Jacobs gives them something. They had it with Aaron Jones. It's what they're doing it's a run style. It's Aaron Jones added to the passing game, something that to me that Josh Jacobs doesn't really add, and they don't really ask him to. It's just running the ball. And they have solid wide receivers, and Jordan Love gets them the ball. He does have the turnover issues. As we talked about earlier off the pod, it was his record of turnover stop with this game. And it's something he does, and to me that limits him. But they've been able to overcome it, and they're a good team. They have 3 losses, but I go to when Jordan Love was out, Matt LaFleur was a guy that was able to take Malik Willis, who was discarded by the Titans and had a lot of hope he was able to get the Packers wins. And to me, that goes to Matt LaFleur. It also goes to the Packers defense. His Packers defense is good. And going to the Niners when they didn't have Brock Purdy, so that limited their offense, but they did pretty well against the run. And as I try to look up the stats for the Packers and how they did, they held the Niners to 7 points. But the key thing is the run game, and that's what teams are going to do. And as I look at that right now, that's something to where I'm putting them at 2, because this is a defense that was young. And as I look at their rushing, they held the Niners to 44 rushing yards. And 2.8 yards per rush. That's a huge thing for the Packers. When you got to think about the Lions are a team that loves to run the ball, and you're just figuring out how you can beat the Lions. So to me, the only negative for this Packers team is Jordan Love, but you have
He's
to
more
give
positive than he is a negative.
Yeah, but I also think you got to think that turnover is going to stop. I think Jordan Love's going to get out of that.
He also throws touchdown passes that you can't really throw unless you're not worried about throwing picks. It's kind of that gunslinger mentality. And while, yes, he can get ahead of you and you can throw a lot of picks, you can also throw some of the greatest touchdown passes I've ever seen. So you got to live with – it's kind of like I compared a lot to the Rockets where they played against the Warriors and they lost. And they should have probably won that game in Game 7, but they missed like 27 straight threes, right? You gotta. I love it because it's so symbolic. It's you die by what you live by, and that's why you gotta be. If you have Jordan Love as a QB, you can't tell him to stop turning the ball over. He's gonna turn the ball over sometimes. He's also gonna throw some of the greatest passes you ever see because he's not scared. You don't want him to become scared, so you just gotta live with what you die by, or die by what you live by.
Well, that is true, as you say. To me, if Jordan Love, he is a very good quarterback as much as I don't like it. This is the process we see quarterbacks go through. Because we've seen Mahomes make those plays, and then he'll also have
Mahomes hasn't changed. Not turnovers-wise. He leads the NFL in picks. You can't say that that's changed.
I think this year's an outlier, but I remember
last year he still had like 12 or 13.
Yeah. But I do think that it's a learning process for Jordan Love. And I think he's going through that, and they've been very fortunate to keep winning. And he still makes those great plays. I think there's another level.
I don't think there is some of the touchdowns he throws without some of the picks. He threw, actually, my bad, he threw 14 picks last year, which is Mahomes, which is a lot. Right? So that's not changed. I'll go last 4 seasons. 13, 12, 14, and then this year 11.
Wow. Okay.
That's not – I don't see any change in the numbers, in my opinion. It's just who Mahomes is, right? He's going to throw picks. It's going to happen, right? He's not Rodgers. That's not a bad thing. Not everyone's Rodgers, right, where you're not going to throw that many picks. It's – you got to die by what you live by. And if sometimes it's going to kill you. There's going to be a game where Mahomes throws a big pick and they lose in the playoffs. It's going to happen. And that's okay. That's just part of what happens to be that good of a quarterback. And I'm the same way with Love. I don't think we should teach maybe you could become more accurate and throw the 50-50 balls to where they're maybe 55-45 balls, right? To where they're slightly higher chance of your receiver coming down with it. But at the end of the day, he's going to throw picks because of how amazing of a quarterback he is. It sounds wrong, but the picks he throws, while some of them are bad, are because he's not scared, because he wants to push the ball down the field. And that's what happens when you have a quarterback like him. Favre still won a Super Bowl. You can win Super Bowls with this sort of mentality. And I don't think the Packers are necessarily lucky, because it seems lucky because the games are close, right? But Love throws a horrible pick, and it has the greatest drive I've ever seen from a quarterback ever, with 3 of the greatest throws ever, and they come back and win the game. And it's like, well, yeah, he threw a terrible pick, but he also just had the greatest drive I've ever seen to win the game. So it goes both ways. And I completely agree that there's going to be a game a big game where he throws 4 picks and all of them are terrible, and you're just like, this got to change, right? But I don't think it should. I don't think you should. There's going to be a game where, I mean, Curry's had games where he has shot over 10. Stephen Curry, right? And it's obviously that's not the greatest example in the world, but my point with like the Mahomes, it's not going to change, right? Because that's who he is. And you just got to live with the type of player that Jordan Love is. And that's okay. As a Packers fan, look, there's times where I'm banging my head against the wall because he's throwing terrible picks, but you got to die by what you live by. And if you want Jordan Love as your quarterback, which I do, you have to live with it. You got to live with it.
Yeah. I wouldn't say they've been lucky. Their defense to me is what made up for those mistakes, and then Jordan Love makes for those mistakes. But yeah, it's a knock, but it's not a terrible knock. That's just to me that I noticed because I'm looking at their defense. They haven't given up more than 30 points, except only once. Well, I guess it's only once, which was the Vikings in a loss. Well, and then the Eagles in week 1. So I don't see anything alarming on the defense, but this interceptions stick out to me. But like you said, sometimes you got to live by that. And to me, he's still a growing quarterback. But now I'll go to my 3, which is the Vikings. You talk about Sam Darnold, and you talk about the ceiling of Jordan Love. There isn't that ceiling with Sam Darnold. It's really just maintain the ball, and they're a team that I trust their defense, and they just do enough. And that's because with a team with that type of defense with the Vikings, and they have had some, I would say, bad defensive games, because I do think in one of their losses, they gave up 30, maybe even 40 points. As I'm pulling up the schedule right now, they gave up 30 to the Rams, 31 to the Lions. So that's something. I can't really. It's just the offense doesn't have that ability to go score when they need to. They get that lead and then they're able to maintain it. That's my concern about them. But you got to give credit to Kevin O'Connell, and their defense just keeps fighting. And they have some great wide receivers that can make plays. I'm just worried about the ball placement with Sam Darnold, because it does seem like he's come back down to earth for a little bit. Doesn't mean he's a terrible quarterback, but we talk about quarterbacks that can go win you the game. To me, I'm not sure he can do that. He has the weapons to do it, and if he can get lucky and do it, that's the key. But I couldn't have him lower just because of how good they've been, even with Sam Darnold as their quarterback, because he's played well.
Uh-huh.
So that's my concern. So that's my 3 with the Vikings. It's just they're so good, and they just have a solid record, and it's not against terrible teams. They barely lost to the Lions. And the Rams are sometimes good, but they've beaten teams like the Packers, and they've destroyed the Texans. They've beaten the Niners. So there are some quality wins there. Even though, as I look, they did beat the Colts, they did beat the Titans, barely beat the Jaguars, and struggled against the Bears. But I just feel with their record, they deserve to be in that top 5 list, and the coaching staff is really pushing them, and you can see that. My 4 is the Eagles. The Eagles, you mentioned Saquon Barkley, and the Eagles have struggled. Devontae Smith is hurt, but they have a good roster, and it's their defense. They have Vic Fangio. I think their offense can be inconsistent at times, but it looks like they're figuring out how to play with Saquon Barkley. But I don't know how I feel about Nick Sirianni, which is why he's a little bit lower. And Jalen Hurts is a guy that I am concerned about him, but you got to give credit to them as they really have Saquon. They're doing well. And Jalen stats is only 5 interceptions, but he only has 12 touchdowns passing. I'm not sure how he is on rushing. So that's the thing well, I can't say there's something I can't pinpoint. It's just I want to see what the Eagles are doing. They struggled earlier in the year, but I give deference to the Vikings and their coaching staff.
Yeah, I get that. I do. I just I have my concerns with the Vikings because of the quarterback situation. So we'll have to see how it shakes out and whether or not Sam Darnold can avoid turning the ball over in big moments down the stretch. So we'll have to see. What were you saying?
Well, and the thing is, this is why 2 through 4 is so razor thin. I would love to see a game between the Eagles and Vikings. I don't think that's happened yet.
Not this year, no.
I think it may be on the schedule because they've played the Packers, and they're not going against the Vikings because you have teams from the NFC East playing the NFC North. Because you have the Cowboys playing
It's
the
just
Lions.
the playoff one. You know how if you're in the playoffs, it's just like the division. So the top teams play each other. That's how I do. That's why the Cowboys and the Lions play each other, but the Cowboys and Packers don't play.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, then I would love to see that just because as we talked about 2 through 4, that is just a razor thin line. So I understand arguments of, well, Eagles are better than the Vikings, or it'd be tough to convince me the Vikings are better than the Packers, but it just depended on that.
No, because the Vikings beat the Packers. So
that's true.
So it's all and the Eagles beat the Packers, but we have them both below the Packers. So it's razor thin. And I do think it's really weird that of the top 4 teams, we have 3 that are in the same division. So these 2 teams aren't even going to be top 4 teams in the playoffs. So it's going to lead up to some very, very, very concerning matchups for some teams. But my number 5, because I said I'd say it first, I had the Falcons. And it's just because I think they have one of the best running backs in the league. I think Kirk Cousins is very, very good. Drake London has played amazing. And I really trust this defense to come through in big moments. I was really close with the Commanders, but the Commanders, I don't know how a rookie quarterback will play in those big games. It's more concerning the more games I see them lose, where it's like I have Jaden Daniels in fantasy, and Jaden Daniels is consistently not the best in the first half, and then he comes through in the second half. That's not a good recipe for success in the playoffs. It's not, unfortunately. The team is young. I'm concerned about the Brian Robinson Jr. injury that happened today. Austin Eckler also got hurt. They have injuries. Their defense, their corners are not great. I have my concerns. And another team I was really close with was the Seahawks. Same with the Cardinals. Same with the 49ers. I think the team that was probably the closest to putting over the Falcons, the team I'd probably put 6, is the Bucs. The Bucs, now that they have Evans back, they're looking good. I just need to see more from them as a team. They're still 5-6. They will play the Falcons again, and the Falcons did beat them head-to-head. So I had the Falcons right now as my number 5. I'm really interested to see who you have at 5, but I can see you agreeing, but I think you're going to have the Commanders. That's my guess, but I want to see.
I don't have the Commanders, and I don't have the Falcons. I'll give reasons of the Commanders. The Commanders had a great start. They've struggled. They lost to the Cowboys somehow. Which is nice because I don't like the Commanders, especially with like Dan Quinn there, even though it did hurt the draft stock. But you mentioned Jaden Daniels. It's also to me, there is a clear weakness with the Commanders, and it's just run the ball against them. I'm curious what the Cowboys rushing look like. Because I think I saw Dowdle had like 89 yards. But the Cowboys are a team that struggles running the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But Dan Quinn this team is built for a lead, and that's what his defenses are good at. They do have some great defensive tackles, but that is something I am curious to know about. And Jaden Daniels, it looks like he's hitting that rookie role. It doesn't mean he's bad. It's just he had a great start, and I have questions about Cliff Kingsbury. So it looks like Dowdle had 86 yards. But they also did not really. The rushing yards leader for Washington is, you mentioned Eckler getting hurt and Brian Robinson. Jaden Daniels had 74 yards. He did have a touchdown, but really, you can really put any running back against this Cowboys defense, and you should be able to run on them. They're just not built for the run at all. And so it looks like a combined, they have a team 145. So that's actually pretty good. Rushing and a
Well,
little
the
bit
problem,
lower
like I
on the
said, is
Cowboys.
Brian Robinson got hurt, and then Eckler also got hurt during the game. So they had injury concerns.
Yeah. So that's why I just don't trust them, because they're a young team and it looks like those holes are being exposed. Falcons, I worry about their pass rush. They did sack the Cowboys, but their Cowboys offensive line is not good. But they do have some great weapons. I understand choosing them. This was a wild pick for me, but it was your 6 team. I chose the Bucks. The Bucks are 5 to me
I get it.
because
I get it.
there's something about Baker. Like, there's that Baker magic. He's been with them before. You mentioned Mike Evans. They have a good rushing attack, and I trust their defense. Vita Vea can stop that run. He just clogs up the.
But the defense is not bad. I mean, you have Jesse Bates. You have AJ Terrell. You have a very good secondary. They made a lot of moves right before the season started. They picked up Justin Simmons. They picked up a lot of guys. They have Matthew Judon with them, who's played well recently. He had a sack in their last game. I like Atlanta's defense.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about their pass rush. But the thing about the Bucks and Falcons, I know you said they would play again. They actually won't play again because they played earlier on in the season. You had that Thursday night football thriller between the Falcons and Bucks.
They only played twice?
Yeah, they already
did
played
play
twice. Yeah.
And the Falcons won both.
Yeah, the Falcons won both, which is
Oh, that's
I know
right.
it's weird I'm choosing the Bucks, but it goes to this. I would love to see how these guys both perform, but in the playoffs, because Kirk Cousins is good, and I am a Kirk Cousins hater, and I don't trust him, but I also don't trust Baker. It's kind of the weapons around them, and
Those are two guys, Kirk and Baker, that I've been defending against you forever.
yeah, and they have solid weapons. The Falcons have more weapons, but there's just something about the Bucks that gives me the edge over the Falcons, and it's something we'll just have to see. And I know the Bucks had 4 straight losses, but those are against some solid teams: Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs, and Niners. And they were Mike Evans was hurt, so there's something but I see the argument. The 5 team, I can see arguments for the Falcons. I can even see an argument for the Commanders. I also, if you wanted to convince me about the Niners, I'd be cool with it. Even though it's starting to look mathematically impossible for them, just given how they are. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, but if they can just get in and healthy, then I can see that argument for 5, just going, this is the Niners, they could do it. But the NFC is more wide open, especially because I'm talking about the Bucks that are 5-6 right now. And they're my 5 team.
I could see an argument for the Seahawks or the Cardinals too.
Any NFC West team, I can see the argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. The Rams, they're playing right now as we're recording, so they could definitely, I mean, a win against the Eagles will definitely put them in a prime position. There's just, the NFC's tough. It's going to be hard to get into the playoffs, and I think the NFC playoffs are going to be seedings.
Yeah, it's really going to be seedings and just kind of how a team performs that day. But yeah, so I thought we were going to have different lists of just like different teams. But we kind of have the same teams in mind. Like, I'm surprised we agreed on 1 and 2. I thought it was going to be, we have the same one, but different teams. I thought you would have had the Commanders in, but it's just hard to see with the Commanders, and it looks like they're coming back down to earth.
I think they're going to make the playoffs. I'm confident they're going to make the playoffs. My problem is their defense. And also, again, the injuries they've had on offense. And also, Dane Daniels has really struggled in the first half of games. That does spell concern during the playoffs. So they have problems. And a lot of these teams have problems. It's just which problems do you value more than others?
Yeah, and you can make an argument against the Lions, and that's just like the history of the Lions, but the Lions just look like they're a team on the mission, and it's pretty incredible. And I talk about Harbaugh.
It almost seems too perfect.
Yes, it almost does. And I think we're thinking about that because it's the Lions. Like, can they really be this good?
Yes, but also I think I've seen it before where I think a team is too perfect. I know that about the Packers in 2020 when Rodgers had one of the greatest seasons ever, and it's kind of like we're winning every game. And it's like this feels a little bit too good. Feels a little bit too good, and then obviously what happened with Brady happened. So it's happened before. I mean, the Titans when they were the 1 seed. That's another one. It's like I don't know. This is kind of like they're a really good team. They are. The problem is it seems a little bit too good. It's just came the Lions. I mean, this is very Titans-esque. If you remember, the Titans made the AFC Championship game, and then a couple years later were the 1 seed in the AFC. So they already made it to an AFC Championship game, just like the Lions had, even though they were historically not the best team in the world. So can the Lions get over the hump when it matters most? That's really the question.
Yeah, and we'll keep you updated on that. That is all I got. I'll let you close this one out.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please let us know what you guys think about our rankings, where would you rank them, and please catch you in our next video.